everybody. Welcome to the Improv Summit. I'm Spencer, and with me today I've got the man, the myth, the legend, BOC, Brian O'Connell. How's it going today?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. It's
Yeah.
very rare I get to be called a legend. Completely unworthy of that term, but I'll
Well,
take it.
some might call you Dr. God, am I right?
Or at least 1/5.
Yeah,
I'm
there you
at
go.
least I'm at least 20% Dr. God for
20%
sure.
Dr. God, but all man, all myth, all legend.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, let's jump right in, shall we? We know,
Sure.
obviously, a little bit about Dr. God. Maybe you'll talk about it, maybe you won't. But what is your improv background? I know that's a hefty question, but just give me the bullet points.
Yeah, I didn't discover I crazy enough people don't because I'm known as sort of like the improv guy, but like I started off with sketch. I've been doing sketch for since I was like 12 or 13. That's where I really fell in love with comedy, all that. Improv to me was I'm from a small town in North Carolina, so we didn't really have like improv, not even short form, so to speak. So the only thing I knew about improv was watching reruns of the British Whose Line Is It Anyway
Mm-hmm.
on like Comedy Central. This is I'm showing my age. Back then there were two channels. There was the Comedy Channel, and then there was Ha, and then they merged and became Comedy Central.
Ah,
So that's the only thing so I didn't know that improv was something that you could do. I thought this was something that was just created in England for this particular show. And it wasn't until I was 27 years old and found improv. A girl I dated in college and stayed friends with was doing a show at IO West, and she said, "Do you want to come see my improv show?" I said, "Sure. When is it?" And she was like, "It's Sunday night at 11 o'clock." And I was like, "I don't have HBO, so I'm not gonna be watching, The Sopranos or 6 Feet Under or whatever." So yeah, sure, I'll come. And that show was called Tiger Pants, and they just happened to have the greatest show that they had ever done
mm.
it that night, where I just like I can still recite probably like 80-85% of it from memory. And I was just like, I remember being in the balcony at iOS watching this and going like, what is this? I have to do this. And the house manager came out and was like, thanks for coming out tonight. If any of you like what you saw here, we teach classes here to teach you how to do this. And I fucking ran downstairs. Excuse my language if this is supposed to be PG for the
You
kids.
know, it is what it is.
I ran downstairs and shoved my head into the box office. That poor intern that was just trying to close up and go home. And I was like, I hear you have classes. Teach, do this, how money take. And they're like, oh, well, we just signed up for, that was January 19th of 2003 was when I saw that show. They're like, oh, classes just started. It's 2 weeks in, but they start a level 1 every 8 weeks. And you can just call the office tomorrow when they open at noon, and they'll take your money and sign you up, because we're always signing up people for level 1. And at 12:01 on Monday, January 20th, I I called in and gave them my credit card number, and that was it. I was hooked, and I never left. I found the thing that gave me purpose. That is how I found improv. That is how I found my best friends. That's how I found my mentor and Miles Stroff. That's how I found you. That's how I found
Yeah.
the guys at Dr. God. That's how I found my lovely girlfriend that I live with. Improv saved my life. So that is my improv history background.
I love it. I love it so much. You actually kind of already answered the next question, which is what drew you to
Great.
improv, because it seems like it's that Tiger Pants show. Maybe there's
Yeah,
more
it's
to it.
definitely yeah. I eventually ended up going, like, I went to see Tiger Pants so many times to capture that like spark again, and also just because I liked them. They were legitimately good. To eventually they asked me to, sometimes it was just me. So it'd be like, hey everybody, because it's 11 o'clock on a Sunday night
Right.
and it's just me in the crowd. So they're like, hi, we're Tiger Pants. Can we have a suggestion? Brian. I'm like, Castle Grayskull, a show for me. Mr. Smarts. Apologies to Nirvana. So eventually they just asked me to sit in, and then eventually I just joined. They were just like, "You want me in Tiger Pants?" Yes. Click. Before
That's awesome.
Jason X can change his mind. I think for me, improv. I start off as a sketch musician. I went to film school. I was a working musician for 8 years. I always loved to read. I always loved to write, and it seemed like improv when they talk about improv, you're not only just the director, you're also the cinematographer, you're the editor, you're the production designer, you're the sound effects, like all that. And it just seems to combine all of the things I already like, the pure joy of creating, but also the myriad and multiple ways of creating, and marrying that with the immediacy of the instant feedback from the audience of if you're riding that wave. And I also played team sports, so the idea
Mm.
of having that sort of team camaraderie and practicing and like running drills and doing all that stuff really really spoke to me. And like it felt like being in a band and on a soccer team at the same time, and you all hung out with each other. It felt like being in a gang, and I loved
Mm.
every possible permutation and concept of improv. I have yet to find anything in improv besides purity tests, which I despise. Uh, there's really nothing in improv that like doesn't like just hit the big red pleasure button for me. It's just like
Mm.
I'm a psychopath when it comes to this art form. I am that guy that spent 2 hours after hours on a dark stage by myself doing chair sets with both hands, just to make sure that there's never a moment on stage in any show that I couldn't pick up a chair with either hand and set it anywhere on stage and not make a single noise, because dragging that chair from the back wall is a sound that
Mhm.
covers up your first line of dialogue that the audience and your partner cannot hear, so they can't respond to the first thing said and all that kind of stuff. So that's how my brain works. I have no problem doing any minutia involved with improv, whether that is doing something like this or having a beer with someone and talking shop for 2 hours.
Mm.
I like Ryan Hitchcock and I have spent hours upon hours just talking about what is the future and purpose of a house team structure, like all day, right? You
Yeah.
cannot find anything for improv that I that again doesn't just hit the big red pleasure button for me. Boc all day every day twice on Sunday.
I love that, and it's even
Thank
one of
you.
those things where when you're talking about the chair sets, I mean, one thing that I've noticed with improv is sometimes people like to get a little sloppy with the improv, but doing chair sets, and like you said, like that sound just bugs me when you're dragging a chair. But in
Yeah.
general, picking up a chair, if you have an idea, grabbing a chair and just placing it, as opposed to like dragging it to get it set up, just grab the
Hmm.
chair and place it. So even these things
Yeah.
make it look cleaner, which makes it even more efficient and even more like people are like, wow, they're making up words, but they're also making up choreography and where to move the chair, and they're making it all up on the spot. It's great
Yeah.
because it feels less it feels cleaner and it feels more like tight knit
Mhm.
and more um as if it was something that was already scripted, even though it's not. So the audience gets a better show. They get more enjoyment from it because it's not like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I'm waiting for this person to drag a chair across stage," unless it's a bit or whatever that in the scene the character just loves dragging a chair around.
Yeah,
But
and in basketball, I'm a huge NBA fan as well.
mm,
There's a lot of crossover I find between professional basketball and improv. But in the NBA, they call that when the five guys on the court, or when the team is really locked in on defense, they call it playing on a string, where
mm,
all five of them look like they're connected at the waist by a rope. And I feel like that's sort of similar when you see an improv group doing that, where it's like, or the way that Dell described the family, where it's like watching the family is like watching six guys fall down the stairs and all land on their feet at the same time. And I'm like,
mm,
that's
mhm.
when people say like, what do you think is good improv? I'm like, good and bad is subjective, but I definitely know what successful improv looks like. I know what it feels like. I've done it.
Mhm.
I've seen it done. Someone just asked me that yesterday. They were like, what's the most elegant edit you've ever seen in your life? And I was like, first of all, fantastic question, Sean Monahan. Uh, and it was Bacadol and Gross, and I think Dan Banis. Maybe it was, no, Rob Janis. It was Rob Janis. Excuse me. They were doing Foursquare. Lutz was out of town, and they did this thing where they were playing three stand-up comics who were in a green room, and they were all bombing their stand-up sets that night. And so what they did is they just morphed it. They morphed the stage by when they were sitting on the stage with their feet in the well, they were the guys in the green room. And if two of them moved into the front seats of the audience, that's what like sort of visually the other person would get up and start doing their stand-up set. So they were like almost on a lazy Susan. And
Mm,
when they would rotate, here's the genius part. When they rotated back, like Pete and Rob got excuse me, Dan Backadall and Janice got back on the stage. Pete went into the back far corner of that iOS stage where it's the long hallway and you turn at the L and there's the ice machine there.
hmm.
He went back there, and every once in a while you'd hear, and so airports, can you believe airports? Like, what's going on with airports? With the Doppler effect of like you were hearing them go, and so he would come through the curtain and be like, "Oh, guys, tough crowd out there. Crickets. No one was laughing." I was like, "That's the
That's
most elegant. That's
incredible.
insane, right? That's
So
incredible."
awesome.
And it was just this, like, just moving from sitting in the front seats to sitting on stage, rotated the whole thing, and they all took turns. So I think Pete was the first one to do it, and then later on, Dan Backadall's my boy. So Backadall was being really sort of leaning into himself. Or so later on, when it was his turn to be back in the corner, I mean, what, you guys all a bunch of fucking corpses? Like, come on, right? This is a comedy show, right? And then he would come to the curtain. Ah, those guys are terrible. uh,
It's very noises off.
Backadall, very much so. Also, Backadall's great because Backadall does not suffer any fools, and he's been doing it for so long that like he just had fun stories of like doing Second City. Uh, I was doing Second City main stage. This guy during the sketch show, he's got his feet up on the stage the whole time, and we're like ducking around it, because we can't move the props and the everything is he's got his feet up there like an asshole, like this is his living room. So I waited till the improv set. First blackout, I kick this guy's table, full beers everywhere, and the lights come up, and he's like, "Bro," and I'm already gone. I'm already off stage. He has no idea it was me. Just like,
Now he'll
that's
know.
just, yeah, that's just that classic Chicago Irish Polish Catholic, just like, oh, is that how it is? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And here's the improv set. Blackout, kick, just brilliant.
Yeah.
Those are my guys. Those are the people I look up to. I'm just like,
That's
yes,
awesome.
give me more. Even
Yeah.
improv stories, I love. Just big pleasure button
Oh, we'll,
for
we'll
me.
get we'll get to some improv stories here. But I
Oh,
know you
excellent.
mentioned that you liked NBA. So
Very
I
much so.
actually,
Yeah.
what's fascinating to me is I've learned, like, I'm not a big like follower of sports. I don't know a lot
Mhm.
about players or anything. I watch basketball occasionally. I enjoy it. Football sometimes when my teams are playing. I've gone to
Mhm.
games, but I've never realized how the analogies of sports regarding improv is how I most quickly pick up on an improv skill. And I have this
Yeah.
one, you'll love it. It's a basketball analogy by the incredible Holly Laurent. And I've said it multiple times, but it's one of my
Mhm.
favorite things. And this is when I finally understood improv from an iOS perspective. And this was in 5B, which for those who are watching or listening, this is the last level when I was there of the program.
Mhm.
So it finally clicked for me in the last level of the program. So sometimes it takes a while, but she said, think of it like a basketball game. There's the court and there's the bench. When you're in the sidelines waiting to edit, trying to figure out where to take the scenes and all of
Mhm.
this, you're on the court. And when you're on stage in the scene, you're being present, you're on the bench, you're taking a break. And I literally went, holy crap. This
Wow.
whole time, I'm thinking, like, if I'm on the sidelines, no one's paying attention, I don't have much to do, and all of this. When I
Mhm.
realized I'm actually doing more work on the sidelines than to just have fun and play in the scene. And I was like,
Huh.
wow. But my brain also works to where it's like, okay, I know when to edit. I know when to bring this character back. I know where to
Yeah.
bring this. I know all that kind of, like, I'm good with. Oh, let me edit here. Let me call this button. This is time for lights. All these things. I'm good with that.
Mhm.
My brain works that way. But learning that, I was like, oh, the pressure is completely off when I'm on stage because it's like I'm not even playing right now. I'm just having a conversation with someone else.
Yeah.
And what was incredible, I was like, now I'm not, at that point, I was like, I'm not afraid to jump in and be in a scene. Now I'm more terrified of the back line because there's more pressure. But it was an
That's crazy.
incredible analogy where
Yeah,
I'm good at the
I didn't think you were
sidelines.
going that way. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird the twist because you would
Yeah.
think like, oh, when you're on stage, that's when you're on the court, and when you're off stage, that's when you're on the bench. It's like, no, it's the flip of it. I really like that.
Yeah.
I
And
like that a lot. I yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I use basketball references a lot. Basketball and professional wrestling, which are also two things that I'm very big into. Uh, and people are like, I'm like, well, first of all, it works really well as an analogy, and there's a reason why there are so many basketball fans and pro wrestling fans who are also improvisers. But
Oh, sure
also,
are.
yeah, but also I'm using the example of you bring yourself to the art form because there's only one you, right?
Hmm.
And so those are the things I'm really into. Like, why wouldn't I use those as examples of passions that also work here? So in NBA, I always use the example is like it's probably of all the professional sports, it's probably the closest to improv. You have a wooden floor, a basic wooden floor. You are basically naked. There's very little accoutrement that basketball players wear compared to football players or hockey
Hmm.
players or even soccer players. I played soccer for 13 years and we had shin guards. You don't have any of that in the
Hmm.
NBA. You're basically naked. The audience is right on top of you. We have there's a coach, but once the game starts, there's only so much the coach can do. It's really about
Hmm.
what you guys put work in practice in rehearsal.
Hmm.
You have the 7 seconds or less offense. You have the triangle offense. You have the Princeton offense. You got the Herald. You got the deconstruction. You got the JTS Brown, and there are players, but also there are positions, right? There you have your quote unquote straight men, your logical players, your wild cards, your pirates, your robots, your ninjas. You also have point guards and centers and forwards. But what really matters when you really play and come together as a team, they talk about team chemistry. It's it's a point guard and a center are very vastly different. They're both basketball players and they fulfill vastly different roles on the court. And you need both of them to fill those roles the best you can. But that only really happens when it's those late night road trips where you're sharing a room together and having a late night pizza and talking about your families and where you came from and all that. And so that night that we're playing in the center's hometown and I'm the point guard and the center has all of his family members there, and not only his family members but also his recently unestranged father who's maybe back in his life for the first time in a while. And it's like, I know it's important for that guy to have a good game. So as the point guard, I'm gonna make sure that we're feeding that guy the ball. I'm gonna make sure that he keeps his head up if he blows a defensive assignment. It's like, no, none of that, man. Keep your head up. We'll get him the next time. We'll get him the next time. But also, your family's here, right? And having that guy having the game of his life and doing the post-game conference phone call, and then go out to dinner with all of his family members and sort of use that as sort of a celebration of him and where they've come from and all that. That to me is no different than doing an improv show and someone backstage going, "Oh, by the way, Sarah's parents are coming tonight, so everyone cool it with the blue language." And I'm like, I may still curse, but guess who's having an amazing show tonight? If come hell or high water, Sarah is. I'm gonna break my back bending over backwards to make sure that Sarah has a great job because her parents are in town from Detroit and they're worried about their daughter who's trying to be in Hollywood and make a career in the entertainment business. I'm gonna make her look like $1 million and have her parents go, "You were so funny," like, and make them go back to Detroit feeling good at least for maybe a couple more months or a year or two of the choices that their daughter made before they start worrying about her again and being like, "Is this what you want to do?" Like, that's to me. There's 82 games in a season plus the playoffs.
Mm.
To me, that's how I kind of look at it. I look at the a year in improv. It's like, all right, this is the 2020 season. This was a rough one. This was a rough
Hmm.
season, everybody.
Hmm.
You
Sure
know, like
is.
getting into that huddle and be like, okay, we didn't get to practice as much as we
Hmm.
wanted. A lot of the games have been canceled. It's a short schedule, but we're gonna get them next year, right?
Hmm.
2021 season. Hopefully, knock
Yeah,
on wood,
hopefully.
will be better. So yeah, there's a lot of correlations, but I think professional basketball and improv seems to have the most one-to-one comparisons.
Yeah, that's great. And I think one thing that it's interesting to know is that you can give me a basketball analogy all day long and I'll totally be like, I got it. Even if I have no really idea what you're talking
Yeah.
about as far as basketball, I understand how basketball works, so I understand how improv works. Now, someone else might
Mhm.
not necessarily find the sports analogies to be helpful, but I think that's what I love is that there's so many different people you can take classes with, so many different styles, so many different forms, so many
Mhm.
different like schools of thought and knowledge and philosophy that
Yeah.
if you find like it's not clicking, you can always just do something else. Like I feel like it's like people are like, this didn't work for me. I don't like improv after taking a 101 class. But it's like, what did you not like about it? Was it the teacher? Was it the philosophy? Was it that you don't
Yeah.
like short form or you don't like long form? What is it? Try something else and do something new. Which leads me into, in a
Yeah.
weird segue kind of a way, another question.
Mhm.
Well, I guess it kind of works. Are there any? I know you said you're like gung ho, all kind of improv, but do you have any specific types that you find yourself like? I wish I could do this more, or I love it when I get to do this kind of improv, whether it's a style, a genre, a
Oh.
form.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like when it comes to that, like I got very lucky that I found I fell in backwards to the iOS, the Chicago long form style approach, and that just happened to be my brand. Like I know a
Mm,
bunch of people that had to take classes at a couple different theaters before they found like their sweet spot. Like, oh no, I once I found improv theater and I realized that narrative improv was really my jam, and then I like settled in and got very comfortable and all that. But you don't know until you try. Where other people are like
right.
that sort of game based used to be. I'm being very reductive, I know, but like that game based, you know, uh, they always IO is about relationship, UCB is about game, Groundlings is about character, and Impro is about genre. Like it's the most reductive way to put that. And I feel like we're all sort of saying the same things, but in different ways. In the same way that there are different styles of kung fu, right?
Mhm,
It's still about self protection and healing, but there's aikido, there's kung fu, there's karate, there's the taekwondo, the foot fist way,
mhm,
all those kind of things. For so what like me and Paul Valancourt get along really really well, and I'm glad to call him a mentor and also a friend. And he has his triangle of the scene, which I really like and I use a lot of. But also, I'm a position play guy. That's my thing.
mm,
I learned that from Miles Stroth created position play. He did not create the scene types, but he created the language that we use to describe what he calls the scene dynamics. And so position play is 100% my kung fu. Everyone knows me for that. I teach it. Miles has said I'm there's a few of us, me, Jeff Hawkins, Heather Ann Campbell, Backadall for sure, that he trusts implicitly to teach his stuff, right? But
mm, mhm,
I'm definitely the most Johnny Appleseed with it. And that's just the basic concept that position play is you're going to find yourself in it's the theory that you're going to find yourself in one of four basic scene types 99.9999% of the time, and there are a couple of tools and techniques that you have to do to execute those types of scenes, and then the rest is gravy. And people are like, well, don't you think that's like math? I'm like, no, I hate math. I would never ask you to do something math related. They're like, oh, isn't that limiting? I'm like, no, I find it freeing, because once
mm,
the faster I can discover what kind of scene you and I are in, the faster all this like, oh, we're in a logical absurd scene. All I gotta do is hit the game, back off the game, and then start it up again. And then everything else becomes gravy. I'm not out there trying to go like, what's the right next choice? And even then, if you find yourself, what's the right next choice? You're probably just in an alternate reality scene, which means you're just, if this is true, what else is true? Mapping and consistency, right? Character driven
mhm,
scenes, also known as two peas in a pod, also known as absurd, also known as shared point of view. Every theater in the world teaches a version of that type of scene. And then
mhm,
realistic scenes, which is, being truthful up to including your own real name and providing specific details, preferably from your own life. That's it. Those are the four scenes. And whether I'm constantly doing position play and constantly doing the deconstruction, which is also my favorite thing, which I wish I could do more of. I'm also Johnny Decon Seed, where I travel around the world and drop those everywhere, because I just want to see more people doing it, and I
mhm.
want to have more people available for me to do it with. To be selfish in that sense, uh, it doesn't matter who I'm playing with. It doesn't matter if it's a Dr. God revival where we do our Armando style show with our celebrity friends, or if I'm doing an all star pickup show at a festival that I'm at, or it's me and Hawkins do our 2 person, or if it's the scene we're going to probably do later in this improv summit. I'm constantly doing position play and constantly doing deconstruction, whether my partner knows it or not. And it is not, it, it is it's not incumbent upon them to know it, because people are like, well, I mean, what if someone else doesn't know logical absurd? I'm like, I feel like they know the basic rhythms, they may not know the language. And it's just about
Mm,
having a successful scene, not good or bad. There are scenes that work and scenes that could potentially work more. Good and bad does not exist in improv. There's no such thing as good and bad in improv. It's just successful. And successful means, did you and I walk off stage going, ah, like that's it? You're like, ah, pretty good, or high five, or whatever we're gonna do, or like, or someone coming up afterwards to you and me at at Birds down the street and be like, oh my god, those two twin rabbits, like whatever. That's
mhm,
it. That's the successful scene. I mean, you were saying before of like, like what, compliments in improv. Like the highest compliment used to be, you guys you guys wrote that ahead of time, right? Like, but I think enough people now in the zeitgeist are sort of, at least the general public is at least quasi aware of improv, and sort of know
mhm.
that it's popular enough now that I think the new compliment, the new highest compliment you can get is someone coming up to you afterwards in the bar and being like, Spencer, did she finish that novel?
Mm,
You know what I mean?
mhm.
Like that character that you're creating in real time. That's the type of work. That's the dragon I'm chasing at all times. And the deconstruction is usually the form that gives me the highest degree of, the lowest degree of difficulty and the highest degree of success rate. What I consider success rate is to have someone come up to me afterwards and just be like, can I talk to you for a second? And I'm like, okay, here it comes. I'm also a survivor of child abuse, not from my parents. That my parents were great and they loved me and all that, but it's so I don't shy away from sort of the dark things. And
Mm, mhm,
creating dark joy is my 3-word BOC
mm.
line when people are like, what do you like in improv? I like creating dark joy. Uh,
I love that.
so yeah, so if I push the envelopes and stuff, like that's Mike Box Elder got me to come up with that. And when I did his podcast, everyone should listen to Box Angeles. It's a great podcast. Uh, but like, yeah, so when I push the envelope or do things like that, I can usually tell when someone it's happened more than once. So that when people come up to you in the bar afterwards for the show, like, the show was really funny. I was like, thanks. And then like I could sort of pick up on it within a few minutes. They're like, it's that one scene. I'm like, yep, here you go. You and me. Let's go off into a corner. How old were you? What happened? And all that. We're survivors. We're good. Things get
Mm,
better, right? Look at me. Look around like that, And then we end up. There's usually some tears and some hugs, and then if even if I never see that person again, I did something. I helped in
mm.
that moment, and that's I usually say that I try not to go blue, but I do go dark, and sometimes that requires one must go navy. Uh,
Mm, mhm.
so on times I've been accused of it's like anything else. Improv is such in the moment; it's hard to sort of describe afterwards,
Mhm.
or like to look at it in black and white on a page and be like, "Oh," I'm like, I don't actually believe this stuff. I'm I'm portraying it like Miles always gave me a good note way back in the day. I feel like I'm rambling now. I apologize.
No, it's
But
all good.
Miles gave me a good note back in the day that said, if you want to show that racism is wrong, you have to play a believable racist.
Using art as a tool to educate is really what it is.
Yeah, it's another great Milesism when we were on my first team that he was our coach, the Happy Time Rainbow Bunny Squad. We did a decon, and that was one of his first notes to us was that our job as improvisers is to hold up a mirror to the audience, and if they don't like what they see, that's on them. You
Mm,
know what I mean? And like I never forgot that. That, and our job is to. I sort of took this from a amalgam of a couple of different things that Miles said, and he was like, "Oh, I never said that, but I like that. That's good. That's nice." So that was his seal of approval
mhm.
on our job as improvisers is to replicate recognizable human behavior and present it on the stage in such a way that the audience recognizes their own humanity, reveals that revelation through the form of laughter, so we can have a longer discussion and deeper transaction of ideas on how to heal the world. That is what I believe our job as artists is. TLDR version, be interesting. You are interesting, so just be you, right?
Mm,
And
I
no,
love that.
and in no time, yeah, and in no time in that whole like long, spiel that I clearly have said a million times, did I say be funny.
Mhm.
Being funny is not our requirements. That's
I'm
it can be, but it
yeah.
doesn't have to be. That's, yeah.
I'm so glad you
My
brought
boy
that up.
Jeff, my boy Jeff Hawkins put it best. Where he was like, the worst thing that ever happened to improv is somebody put the word comedy behind it because
Mm,
now there's an expectation. And
mm, mhm.
I was like,
I
Jeff, when you are right, you are right.
Yeah, there's also a phrase in comedy sports where they it's like can we get a they're doing like TV genres or whatever. Like
Sure.
can we get a genre and someone shouts comedy and they go, "We're trying. We're really trying. Thank you." Like and and
I didn't know that. That's great.
it's great because it's like it's it's funny because it's like people are like comedy, let's see you do comedy, and it's like, well, hopefully we are, but thank you. And it always gets a
That's
big
a
laugh
total.
because it's like
Yeah.
it's like it's like kind of like getting the suggestion improv. It's like, all right, well, I guess we'll
Yeah.
go do the suggestion of improv. But I want to go back a little bit. It kind of segues into this, but you said the idea, I mean,
So
it does
funny.
segue, but I'm taking it back a little bit.
Yeah.
But you said there's
Please,
no
please,
such
please.
thing as good or bad in improv. It's
Mm-mm.
good
No.
or ways to potentially be better. And so I was going to ask you what makes a good improviser, but I want to ask you what makes a successful improviser because you threw out the word of
Yeah.
finding things successful. So to you, what makes a successful improviser?
I believe that there's no such thing as good or bad in improv. There's no such thing as good or bad improvisers. There are merely improvisers and more experienced improvisers. You cannot beat yourself up for not discovering the art form earlier than you did. It's just I couldn't give you notes as a coach or a director or a teacher that basically goes, ugh, why haven't you been doing this for 10 more years? Right? Like
Mm,
there's nothing for that. There's also no such thing as cheating in improv. If it works, it works. People are like, are you sure? I'm like, yes, the only way it could possibly be considered cheating is if we wrote it down ahead of time, and therefore it would become sketch and it would cease to be improv. Hence, there's no such thing as cheating in improv. What I believe is a successful improviser is someone who's getting out 100% of exactly what they want from it. And
mm,
what I mean by that is that there are improvisers who are clear, or just someone who signed up for a class. They had Tuesday nights free. They wanted to sign up for a class. It was between this and the cooking class at the Learning Annex, but the cooking class was only available on Wednesday, and Tuesday night is the only night they had free, so they took the improv class. They decided that they liked it, and going every week to class is enough for them, and they are getting out of it what they wanted, 100% of what they want from it. There are other people that are taking it who want to be on teams, who maybe have like, it's a bigger pond than just like the major markets of like Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Austin, and San Francisco. I would also include in those
mm-hmm,
like as major improv markets now. Not only just entertainment markets, but also improv, and probably Atlanta too. If you want to like, if for how
mm-hmm.
much production gets made in Atlanta, there's more than enough improvisers in Atlanta who are also on TV. So I would say that's a major improv market now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, oh man, J Star is gonna love me for that one. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome, boys. But there are people who have regular jobs as just engineers who work at a radio station. They love going every week to rehearsal and to do the show, and then having a couple drinks afterwards with their friends. That is their Saturday night bowling league, and
Mm,
those are their bowling league friends. If that is their successful, where they are 100% getting out of it what they wanted. And then there are other people who want to use this as to learn as a tool and technique that they feel like they need to have in their career. That is why it drives me crazy when actors say, oh, I hate improv, I'm just doing it to put it on my resume. Well, then you've missed the point, and you're not getting the skill that your agent told you to get anyway. It's not just a box to check off to put it on a resume, the same way that stage combat isn't just a box to check off to put it on your resume. Unless you want to be in stage combat, like action movies and sword, sword, swashbuckling. I almost said
mm-hmm.
sword buckling. That's not a thing.
Either way,
Uh,
I knew where you were going.
yeah, yeah, but like you have to do that kind of stuff. And also, actors, for the most part, actors are scared of it because the idea of not having the text, not interpreting the text, not having the opportunity to spend several hours, if not days, if not weeks, if not months, agonizing over the text, wringing out every little small part, of what did the playwright mean? And when you're like, you are the playwright, what do you mean? That's a very scary thing for a lot of actors, especially the kind of actors who are like, I'm sorry, Uh, I went into this business to pretend to be other people, not myself, for a
Mm-hmm.
reason. You know, like there's a reason why I want to put on this fake nose and this wig and pretend to be, you know, Richard III. Be myself? Absolutely not. No interest in that. Too scary, right? I want to
Mm-hmm.
disappear in other characters. But for me, what is successful is just, again, are you getting 100% out of it? And none of those things are more true than the other. No, just because you don't, that's where a lot of the that's where a lot of friction, I think, comes in improv troops, specifically improv troops in these major markets where people may have ulterior motives. If there are three people on a 7-person team that want to do this for a living, and the other four are like, "Nah, man, I got my job down at the docks. I'm just here to have fun and a good time." That's going to be tough. You need to have everybody sort of be on the same page, and that's
Mm-hmm.
why I always say, like, you people are like, why don't you ever see the decon anywhere? I'm like, because it's hard. And a lot of people don't want their improv to be that hard. They don't want to try that hard for it. But if you're a theater troupe, if you have like, if you're like the Son of Simile, just to pull out an independent theater that I know about here in Los Angeles, and that does a lot of experimental stuff, or the Actors Gang or anything like that. Like, I don't understand how you don't have a weekly and or monthly improvised deconstruction or improvised JTS Brown or one of those shows,
Mm-hmm.
because that is in your wheelhouse as this experimental theater troupe. It is theatrical. It's acting. It's legitimate acting being done, and done in a way that's sort of like fly by the seat of the pants, but also
Mm-hmm.
very structured in a sense. So I say, like, they're like, I want to do decon. I've had so many people like learn the decon for me, and they're like, we're gonna put together a team, and then it never happens,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine. I'm like, I know how it goes. I'm like, yeah, if you can get 7 people, I will absolutely be your decon coach. I'm not gonna hold my breath though, right?
Yeah,
So now I'm
exactly.
at the point where I'm just like, do you belong to a theater troupe? Do you belong to, like, do you pay dues at a theater? Because you have a better chance of taking those 8 actors that are like love theater acting and do plays and really get into it, and love, last year you guys did Taming of the Shrew and Hurly Burly. You have a better chance of getting those 8 to do a deconstruction with you, a regular
Mm.
deconstruction with you, than you do any improv team on the planet. That's just the facts. That's just the truth of
Yeah,
it.
that's great.
So it really, yeah, just what I consider a successful improviser is someone that is getting 100% out of it, what what they want from it, and that's short form, long form, no form, rather. I personally have no interest in seeing, 5 or 6 dudes in their street clothes get up and do a montage and dick around. But I'm not the president of improv. I don't get to
Mm-hmm.
decide that. If there are 4 teams being perfectly happy going up every Sunday night in a black box theater with a bucket for donations and a cooler of beer to just pass around beers and liqueurs, and that's what they want to do, good on them. That's their money. That's their time. I don't get to tell them it's shit. The same way that long form people don't get to tell short form people that they're shit, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
the same way that sketch people don't get to tell improv that it's shit, and vice versa. Every sketch comedian could stand to take an improv class to learn how to act like a regular human being in your sketches and not just a sketch writer reciting things. And every improviser could stand to take a sketch class to learn a little goddamn structure and a little bit of like how to take care of other people and be
Mm-hmm.
beholden to a group. You won't go off on flight of fancies on your own and sell out your improv teammates for your own funny jokes. If you took a sketch class or were in a sketch show for a minute and learn how that shit don't fly when you get backstage after, like, hey man, you went up on your lines and you kind of you stepped on the joke, and that joke was the premise of the scene, so we just kind of flailed for the next 5 minutes. Thanks a lot, Dave. Right? Like,
Poor
twice
Dave.
every yeah. And all of us could stand to take regular acting classes for that same reason. Whether you do improv, sketch, storytelling, acting craft isn't just pretending to smell an orange and sucking on a champagne cork and all the other
Mm-hmm.
weird things. Like, it's learning stagecraft, how to find your light, how to not turn your back to the audience so they can see you, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
how to project all that stuff. So
Absolutely.
that, And until we start doing that, we won't be considered a legitimate art form anyway. So I'm going to put my box away, because otherwise
Right.
that soapbox is going to get real tall, and you don't have that much time.
No, it's all good. I was gonna say one thing. It's interesting you talk about like how like Dave messed up, the punchline. He messed it up. I actually did when I was
Yeah.
doing my sketch, my grad review at Second City. We did one
Mhm.
performance of the show, and my character was like this like teenager who is basically a virgin, but he pretends like he's not, and it's very obvious that he pretends like he's not. And I
Yeah.
remember at the very
I have
beginning,
done so much of the sex. I have
yeah,
done a lot of the sex, my friend. Yeah, that
that's
kind of
pretty
thing.
much him, but he was like kind of
Yeah.
broy. And so it's
Copy.
me and the doctor in the scene, and the doctor literally, one of the first lines that she goes, I have some like very like personal questions I want to ask you. She's like, are you a virgin? And my character goes, are you kidding, doc? Look at me. Do I look like I'm a virgin? And someone in the audience starts laughing, and they go, yes. And then I was like, the first line out, I was like, that's the punchline. Okay. So someone in the audience literally gave away the punchline. It was still funny at the end, but in my mind, I was like,
Yeah.
well, that's the punchline. And this audience member has never seen the show, but they figured out the punchline in the first line.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things where it's like, am I going to be like, oh, that audience member ruined the whole show now? Because
Yeah.
no, I mean, that's what happens. So if Dave
I love it.
pulls up on his line,
Yeah.
whatever.
I love that they got it. Like, I don't mind an audience member doing that,
Yeah.
but there's always a time and a place too. Like, I
And
don't
they were
care much
enjoying
for
it.
hecklers.
So yeah,
Yeah,
that's the thing.
it wasn't a heck, it wasn't
Right.
a heckle. Although my favorite one of that, which is the opposite, and probably only they could get away with this, but like the first time that the Kids in the Hall reunited and did that
Mm.
stadium tour, the first time they did it, back in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. I can't remember when they did it, but the lights come up. They're sitting at a table with that red and white checkered gingham pattern, and it's Foley and Foley and McDonald, and someone in the audience goes, "Citizen Kane!" Like, because it's the Citizen Kane sketch,
Uh-huh.
right, in the pizza
Yeah.
shop. And I shit you not, McDonald goes, "Oh, you know this one?" And then he and Foley just proceed to just read the paper for 5 minutes and then black out. They didn't do the sketch.
That's so funny.
I just remember being like, that is such a dick move. But can you imagine everyone sitting around that guy in the audience going like, it's my favorite sketch. And now I don't get to see it because you just had to shout out Citizen Kane. We all knew it was Citizen Kane. Could we have just enjoyed it? Like,
Yeah.
they're
Oh
not,
yeah.
no one was mad at Foley and McDonald. Just to have the presence of the mind in that moment. Great improv moment in a sketch show. Also a sketch that was literally improvised. Like most of their early material, they said the first season and a half was improvised. They almost never wrote anything down. Dave Foley and Kevin McDonald literally came up with Citizen Kane by being at the pizza place across the street from the Toronto theater that they were working at,
Mm.
and just like scribbling it on napkins and doing it over and over and over again until they're like, yeah, oh, at this part, now you say this. Yeah. They just improvised it. So what a great improv moment on top of an
Absolutely.
improv moment. Oh, you know this one? And then the Foley to go along with them. Foley doesn't like Foley's got the first line. He could have just started the sketch with, "No, I'm backing my boys' play. We're just gonna read the paper for 5 minutes and not do the
That's
sketch."
so wild.
And again,
uh,
you have to be the Kids in the Hall to pull that off.
yeah.
Uh,
Oh, for sure. A
yeah,
little bit
I
of
mean,
clout there.
yeah, I mean, I got to improvise once with Kevin. I have met 3 of the 5 boys. Kids in the Hall are my guys, so I've met 3 out of the 5 kids, and he was very nice to me. He was great. But we improvised together, and literally the first line he negated me, and I went, "Fucking perfect." We were at Cincinnati Improv Festival. We're doing the All Star Show. I walk out. They are in a Toys R Us. They have established they're in a Toys R Us, and they're looking around. And I come out, and my first line, I shit you not, my first line is, "Hey, can I help you guys find anything?" I am clearly a Toys R Us employee. This is clearly the employee customer, logical absurd game. I said, "Hi, can I help you guys find anything?" And without missing a beat, Kevin McDonald just goes, "That's the pedophile that's been following us around all day." I was just like, Kevin, Kevin, I look up to you. I think I think there's I don't know if there's video, but I definitely have a photo of that on my Facebook. It's him pointing, and you can just see me going, I love you so much. I love
Mm,
that you negated me. The first thing I get to finally live my dream and be in a comedy show with Kevin McDonald, who wrote Daddy Drank, I think arguably the greatest sketch of all time. And the first thing you do is negate me. You son of a bitch. I love it.
mhm.
That's a better story than if we had actually had a great scene.
Yeah.
I don't think it was, but
Well,
that's all right.
just the memories of it all, I guess, is the big thing. Um,
The only thing anyone remembers is Jeff Hawkins putting his head through what he thought was a regular wall, but it was just a styrofoam wall that had been painted to look like brick. And so he
oh,
just
geez.
he was yeah. So he was doing a bit where he was like, "Oh no, I'm so dumb," but instead he was just and we all just went,
Oh,
"Oh no!"
that's funny.
He was mortified. He was mortified, and it could have only happened to Hawkins.
Yeah,
Next
there you go.
question.
Yeah, I was gonna
Mhm.
say I got just a couple questions left, nothing too crazy.
Sure.
One
Right, right,
question I
right.
have is I want to give you this scenario. So let's say
Mhm.
you, with your improv experience, are you. Let's just say you're you in this scenario. You're
Okay.
you. And let's say I am Jack Smith, who came
Okay.
in off the street, who's like, I heard there's an improv jam. I want to check it out. I want to jump up there and improvise. So he gets up there,
Yeah.
and Jack Smith and you were in a scene together, but Jack Smith is like, I'm terrified because I've never done this. I don't know what to do. And I see you play and you're
Yeah.
so good. What is one thing you would do as an improviser to have that person shine, but on the flip side also feel like as a strong improviser you're not like this is like where do you I guess the mindset of it all, like how do you both shine in that scene?
Yeah, no, that's a great, great question. Which is great. It's because one of the things I miss the most about performing. I mean, I've made my peace with it early on. I was like, we're probably not doing a show this year, BOC. Just accept it. But especially at iOS, there was a show called The Lottery,
Hmm.
where a student from each level would play. It would get a 4 week run, and and then every week there'd be different like three veterans would get up and play with them. And I love doing that. The Cherry Pick was the same way. It was part of Cherry's show. Cherry was just you talk about marketing and advertising improv very smartly. They were like, huh, the two shows that get the most audiences are jams and cage matches. We should have a jam and a cage match and do our show in the middle of it. Brilliant, Cherry. You had a sold out audience every week, right? And they
Mm-hmm.
were great, so that helps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I love doing those shows because without fail, almost always the best scenes I would have would be with like level one students, very inexperienced players, because they are terrified, but they know just enough to listen and respond to the last thing said, but not so much where they feel like I've got this whole comedy thing figured out, right? Where they're trying to make like big moves or go for laughs or think they've or as John Crowley has put it best, he was like, the problem with too many Herald players is they've seen too many Heralds. They think that's what you have to do now. Uh, and I think for someone like that, I've done that before, where I've literally just like put my hand on the back of the person who has not come out on stage for the last 15 minutes. 15 minutes into a 20-minute set, I'm just like, here we go, buddy, you and me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I find, again, this is where position play comes in. The highest compliment you can pay another player is do what they're doing. You know, character-driven scenes where you mirror and heighten peas in a pod. So they're like, "Oh man, that lawnmower scene was so great. How did you know?" I was like, "Man, I was just mirroring you. Like, this wasn't magic, right? But it
Mm-hmm.
seems like magic to them in the moment." And so this is a note that I give, or this advice that I give to students who have asked me before, and then it's the same advice I would give in the I would put my money where my mouth is in the moment. If someone comes up to me and says, "I still get really nervous before improv shows. What should I do?" I'd be like, "Play nervous characters. You're already there, right?" And so if I see someone's like really nervous and upset and unsure of themselves and on stage and kind of freaking out, I'm going to come out and join them, and I'm going to be like, I am so nervous right now. Are you nervous? I am very nervous. This is and they're going to be like, they're just going to say yes, because they at least know that improv you say yes, but also they're not going to think I'm making fun of them. They're going to be like, they're either going to A, think that I am also truly nervous in that moment, or B, they're going to think, oh, he can pick up on that I'm nervous right now. So like we're gonna do the nervous game, or like whatever subconscious,
Mm,
right? They've
mhm,
got going on. But I'm like, I feel really nervous right now. Are you nervous? I feel nervous. Are you nervous? You great. And they'd be like, no, I'm super nervous. I'm like, right, right. This test counts for like half our grade, and then I'm gonna make a premise. Then I'm
mhm,
gonna lay a thing on it, and I'm gonna lay a thing because Miles used to do a show back in Chicago called Anyone Can Be Funny, where he would take someone out of the audience who was not an improviser, who was just to see the show, and he would ask them a couple questions, do a quick interview, like, what do you do, like, what do you do for work, like, did you go when's the last time you went grocery shopping, whatever, like that. And then he would improvise a 2-person set with that person, and just make them the star of it, right? Just keep
mm,
using things that they know, right? Similar to like how the dream works, that improv form. And so that's what I would do. I would just be like, I am also nervous. It is okay to be nervous. It is okay for both of our characters to be nervous. And now that once you have admitted that you are nervous, I'm going to put a very simple, recognizable premise that all of us, because again, recognize our own humanity and reveal that revelation through the form of laughter. Everyone in the audience and my partner, this test is going to count for half of our grade. And we all go, I have also taken a test in school that would, like, yes, that would be a thing that would be nervous for. And then we're just doing the scene. And then they forgot to be nervous about being on an improv stage. And they started being nervous about a big test coming up. And then that's, it's pretty impossible to be unsuccessful in that moment. That's what I would consider a successful improv scene. Did you get what I was going for?
mhm.
Did, like, maybe the tautology and maybe the grammar wasn't correct everywhere, but like, did you understand my meaning? Right? Then great. Then we
Mm,
had a successful scene. Right? That's it.
yeah, that's great.
That's what I would do.
That's awesome.
Just be nervous.
Yeah, yeah. It's even interesting because I always still, even then, it's like, I mean, I have a theater background, I have a film background, and I still, like, when I do improv, I still get nervous because, but it's not necessarily like I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared, but it's like an energy of like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. I know that,
Yeah.
and it's like, because it's improv, I'm not like, well, I'm going to go out and do the second scene. I'm going to jump in and do the scene with this person. It's just like, I don't know what's going to happen, kind of on your toes kind of feeling. And I like
Yeah.
that feeling to an extent. But anyway, I'm going to segue in. We got just a couple questions left before we get to the big
Sure.
question. Do you have any plugs or any
Oh my God.
pitches, anything? Yeah.
The big question. Oh
Yeah,
man.
right. Any plugs, any pitches for
Yeah.
anything that you want to throw out there?
Yeah. Before I plug for a second, I just had to remember too, like, Neil Flynn, like Brian Stack and I were talking about this the other day
Mm,
online. Neil Flynn is probably the best guy that I go for, because he's a classically trained theater actor and all that. Um, he once told me improv. He was like, improv is great because, like, once you become comfortable in improv, like the whole actor's nightmare of like, what if you forget your lines? What if you're so used to and accustomed to not having any lines?
mm,
What's the fear? Who gives a shit? We'll find it again in a couple of lines. Don't worry about it. We don't have to call cut. We'll get there, right? Which is
mm,
great. But he
mhm,
also, Stack told me about this line that Neil told him a long time ago, which is sort of the flip of that, which I thought was really interesting and really cool. And Neil Flynn is just a very cool, sweet dude. Stack asked him once, he was like, Neil, does all your theater acting help you with your improv, like that? And Neil, just being Neil, was like, well, it definitely helps me act like I like it on the nights it's not working.
mm,
I thought, like, oh, the layer of, like, I'm having a shitty improv show right now and I am not enjoying the improvising I'm doing, but you'll never know it because I'm using my acting chops to pretend like I'm not frustrated that I'm sucking. I thought
mm,
I was like, such a layered onion to go, like, it's like, does your acting training help you with improv? It definitely helps me act like the nights I'm not feeling it. And I'm just
mhm.
like,
Yeah,
Neil,
that's
you're just
a great way to put it.
he's a fountain of wisdom, that guy. Um, so yeah, plugs. Yes, please watch the animated series Held In, created by
Mhm,
me and my boys and Dr. God. It's on the Sci-Fi Channel as part of their Saturday at midnight adult animation block called TZGZ. We are currently on the air right now. I would love to do more seasons of it. So please watch it and like it and talk about it. We've been very blessed to have a lot of great guest stars. Maria Bamford was in the first episode.
Mm,
Our boy Matthew Lillard was in an episode. Kevin Heffernan from Broken Lizard. Broken Lizard is kind of like Dr. God's big brothers. They sort of like
mm.
looked out for us a little
Yeah,
bit.
Beer Fest, Super
Uh,
Troopers, all those movies. For those who are not familiar.
yeah, yeah. Two members of Dr. God are in Super Troopers 2, and two members of Dr. God are in Slam and Salmon. They always
Mm,
try to. Dave and Brendan McLaughlin, who used to be in Dr. God and then moved to San Francisco and decided to have like a wife and kid and a life. How dare he?
yeah.
Uh, but he's still Dr. God official. He and Dave Park went to Colgate, which is where Broken
Jay,
Lizard
right?
got their start.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those guys got their start
Yeah,
at
yeah.
Colgate, and so I think they joined the official like improv slash sketch comedy group that the Broken Lizard guys started at Colgate or were a part of in Colgate, and now alums. Dave and Brendan joined that, so they kind of like looked out for them. So they've always been very kind to us and sort of looked out, and we've sort of done stuff with them, and they've done stuff with us. Dave and Neil both on Tacoma FD, but also we brought them onto our Talking Head show, Mock Apocalypse, yada yada. So anyway, Held In, please watch that. I want to make more of those, and please go watch Bloodsucking Bastards, which is our 2015 film that we made with Fran Kranz from Cabin in the Woods and Pedro Pascal, the Mandalorian, that Joey Kern and Joel Murray and Emma Fitzpatrick, and just all the friends. Parvez Chena, who's on TV right now and killing it. So that's on Amazon Prime. So you can, if you have Amazon, you can go watch that. Please watch our show and please watch our movie, and then hire me for other stuff so that I can plug it on a similar show like this. I always forget
Yeah.
to ask for more. I always forget to ask for more work. I am available. I like making things.
And I will attest to BOC's good things. He's good at making things. He doesn't just make
Oh,
things, he makes things good.
thank you.
You're welcome. And on that note, I have a final question for you, which is the
Yes.
question that I get when the reason why I'm doing this whole summit is I always get a lot of people who are like,
Mhm.
Spencer, you do improv. Where should I take improv? And for me, it's such a loaded question because it's hard to answer that without
Mhm.
kind of knowing people's goals. But what is like one tip or some advice or a tidbit that you'd give to someone if they said, hey, Brian, where should I take improv?
Oh man, that was a great one. I would love to give credit where credit's due. I think I've heard it from several people. So I'll just say Aaron Krebs told me, because Aaron Krebs has given me a lot of great advice, improv advice over the years. Um, if you want to know where you should take improv, go or online. You can go online. A lot of people have their shows online, even shows that they recorded before Zoom, before the
Hmm.
pandemic times. Go and watch their house teams. Go and watch their premiere shows, the ones that they decided are the ones that should go up on 8 o'clock on a Friday or a Saturday night, prime time, pay money to see show comedy type of stuff. And the ones you like, go study there. If you watch stuff from the Ruby LA and you go, that's it, that's for me. I like that. Take classes there. If you watch the Improv, especially now where like everyone is offering classes via online, so there's
Hmm.
no like that that window gets open way more. We're not just talking about IO that doesn't exist anymore. UCB probably won't exist anymore. Groundlings, the Pack Theater where I'm from, obviously. Please take classes at the Pack Theater. I'm biased, but I think we have one of the best faculties in the world. I'm
I've heard great
confident in
things.
saying that.
I've heard great
Yeah, I
things.
mean we,
And not just from Brian.
you know,
I've heard great things from other people.
yeah. I mean, when you talk about, on the improv side, you have Neil Dondade, Sean Landry, Rich Sohn, and Miles Stroth, the war chief. That's like 200 years of improv experience right there. There's not a dud in the group. And then on the sketch side, you have Eric Moneypenny and Heather Ann Campbell from the Midnight Show. Heather has her own TV show now. She was working on the Twilight Zone. I've made animated. I haven't made half of the animated television that Eric Moneypenny has. Sam Brown was in The Whitest Kids You Know, and then you have Z. She was you know, she just had a Netflix sketch comedy show. Dwayne Colbert, who just won an Emmy for
Hmm.
making sketch comedy. Like, we got heavy hitters like Gina Ippolito, who writes on the Unicorn as the staff writer. Like, we improv and sketch, come bring it, right? So
Hmm.
take classes there. But I would definitely say, like, look everywhere. My friends, I was telling you beforehand, like, my friends just opened a very inclusive, diversified theater in New York called the Squirrel Theater that's only living online right now. My boy Tavish Forsyth just opened up the Bird Theater, which is a free slash pay what you can theater in Baltimore. The Hideout in Austin, Cold Town in Austin. Then you've got, Cupcake Theater in Seattle, the Torch Theater in Phoenix, J Star, and Dad's Garage down in Austin.
Mm.
The dozens of places in Florida, Miami, Sax Comedy Lab in Orlando. Oh, Fit, Philly Improv Theater in Philadelphia. Like, the sky's the limit. Watch their shows, watch their house teams, watch their premiere shows.
Hmm.
Rise Comedy in Denver, my fam. Go take classes from those guys. Watch their shows and the shows that speak to you, that make you feel the way I felt when I watched Tiger Pants and said, I wanted this. I need to do this, right? And
Mm.
then that's the place you should take classes at, because it clearly has something that speaks to you. Taking classes just because you need, like, I can't tell you how many people I know that took classes at UCB just to put it on their resume and they were miserable. But they were like, well, UCB is the big hot theater. That's the one where all the agents and managers are going to. So that's the one I need to, like, go if I want to be seen for my career. I'm like, man, no one's gonna hire you to be in their TV show because they saw you be fucking miserable on stage. That's not how this industry works, man. Like,
And I think
I'm here and I'm sweep editing, but I'd rather be anywhere else in the world. Put me in your movie. Like,
yeah,
that's just not gonna work.
and it is.
Right?
It's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, there are schools that have these big names, and like they all have their own merits. Like I went through all the programs, and there were some that I was like, this is what I feel like works for me, and there's some where I went through it, and I was like,
Mhm.
I enjoyed going through it, but I don't need to continue doing advanced levels or continue
Yeah.
with the same kind of style because it's not for me. But and I think it's also like, people are like, well, you did IO West, you graduated, why keep doing it? And I was like, well, I loved IO. I want to do other things,
Mhm.
learn different types of improv, different styles. But also there are places
Mhm.
where I took like, one class and I was like, nope, never coming back. And that's
Yeah.
how it is. But even now with, like you said, with online, I think the industry is going to change, especially for actors, where it doesn't, just because you have the name doesn't mean anything. Show that you are good at, or I guess, successful at doing improv.
Yeah.
Let the work show for itself.
Yeah, I would also encourage people to, like, think that as, to not look at it always as a negative of, like, oh, I didn't like this place or this wasn't for me. You could be really, really, really good at a specific type of improv, but if it's not, or comedy, but if it's not like your heart's desire is not really one, it's okay to walk away from that. LeBron James would be a Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer tight end in the NFL right now. It's okay that he's not playing in the NFL because he's too busy being a Hall of Famer in the NBA. Like, you're allowed to, like, several things. We forget that a lot. Where, like, people are like Harry Dean Stanton is one of the greatest character actors of all time. He also happens to be an incredible musician and songwriter. It's okay to not know, or, like, to have that be a sideline thing. Too often people feel like, especially improvisers, because we're so open-hearted and so
Hmm.
sensitive, and I mean that in a good way. We feel things that sometimes people are like, well, I'm just, everyone tells me that they love my UCP Herald team and I'm so good and so funny, and so I keep doing it. But, like, okay to walk away from something if it's not bringing you joy, right?
Hmm.
You can be, it doesn't always have to be a negative thing. You can be great at something. Like, I, it's going to sound weird because it sounds like I'm bragging, but I'm not. Like I was saying before, like, I'm known as the improv guy, even though I did sketch for way before that. What very few people know is that, again, when I was saying I was a working musician in North Carolina for 8 years, that if I told you the names of the people I have opened for, that knew me on a first name basis, you would shit yourself. You'd be like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, I mean, he's fine. Our drummer's got along real well, so he probably doesn't remember me at all. But at the time, yeah, he was like, "Hey, what's up, Brian?" Like, but that's fine. Do I miss
Mhm.
making music? Sure, but like, I also like making movies with Dr. God. So it's like, it's not a it doesn't always have to be negative. I didn't give up something. I'm not missing out on something. Too often, improvisers feel like they have to do everything. Like, I won't name him, but like, this, you probably know this person too. Is that I was like, dude, you are taking 4 classes, 2 improv, 1 sketch, 1 pilot. You are interning at 2 theaters. You are on 3 sketch teams and 2 improv groups, including a third practice group. You gotta stop. You gotta fucking pick. That's the other thing I would tell improvisers. Don't try and take more than 2 classes from a class from 2 different theaters at the same time. That's your limit. You can take one at this theater and one at this theater simultaneously, but anything more than that, it's too much. You start confusing up your kung fu, and you'll start making UCB moves in your impro class, or you'll start making groundlings moves in your UCB class, and people will be like, "Whoa, what? That's not what we're working on this week. We're working on this, right?" It's just too hard to keep that all straight in your brain. Also, if you're doing nothing but taking comedy classes and working at comedy theaters, similar to hip hop, like Ice-T said this. He was like, if you don't study math or history, what are you going to rap about?
Mm.
Right? You got to learn. He's like, it's called dropping science. You have to study and learn things. You just can't rap about girls and cars and chains,
Mhm.
because at a certain point, that's going to wear out. It's the same thing with improvisers and sketch comedians. If all you do is comedy, then you won't be able to write anything that's relatable to a regular human being. Moneypenny's great about that, where he's like, don't write for the 15%. Don't write for the 5 to 6 other sketch comedians in the back of the theater. Right? He's like, that's why you see so many sketches that take place on first dates and in roommate scenes and office scenes, because people go on first dates and eat in restaurants and have roommates and work in offices. They can relate to that. And then you get them there, and then you can build on that premise. And by the end, robots can be fighting dinosaurs, and the fart monster comes and saves everybody. But you had to start in an Applebee's, because
Mhm.
that's where everyone eats. So
Mhm.
again, you're gonna have a great time editing this all together, because I'm talking my ass off.
No, it's all good.
I've been in
I love it.
I've been inside since March. I don't get to talk to people, Spencer.
I
I'm being a
like
good person and staying inside.
There you go. I like the nuggets. There's a lot of nuggets I can
Mm,
pull from. Now I said that was the last
right.
question, but I
Yeah.
lied. I lied.
Liar.
I have one more question for you, and that question is:
Yes.
would you like to do an improv scene? We've talked about improv. Would you like to do a scene?
No. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, it's up to you.
I'm just making. I will do one. I will say, it's not under protest or anything like that. I'm a guest, and when you guest, you do things. I it's so hard for me to watch. I'm going to be honest. It's so hard for me to watch Zoom improv, because it's like eating a meatless burger from 1995. Like, they've got good stuff now,
Yeah.
right? I'll eat a chicken sandwich that's chicken, and I'm like, this is delicious. This tastes exactly like Burger King. I am for it, right? Which is an underrated chicken sandwich. But the 1995 version of that, you're like, this is not. This is all this is doing is reminding me that I'm not actually having the thing that I wanted to eat. And I find so much of Zoom improv to be that. And I think
Mm,
mostly, if just small mini rant, mostly I think that is because people have to realize that they are no longer making improvised theater, they're making improvised television. And that's a different monster.
mm,
And so, as you can see right now, I have my camera angled up and down, just like a selfie, the most flattering of angles, because this people hunched over their laptop looking to their back is not a flattering picture, but also the least likely framing that you'll see in any TV or movie, like
mm.
TV show or movie, right? Also, using thirds. This is where I also have a BFA in editing, so we can nerd out here for a second. Just use like I just being on, instead of dead center, also like just off to the side. And look, I
Mhm.
have a light in the background, so it's a little washed out, and I don't like it, but it's fine. And then this little phone guy here, just breaking up, just so it looks like television. So I'm gonna improvise with you, and I'm probably gonna not do what I normally do, which is try and do it like this, like how like an actual film shoot would be,
Hmm.
not directly into the camera. But this is also part of the trope now. The Zoom trope is that you do have to look in the camera so that people can see your eyes, right?
Hmm.
So I'm going to improvise with you for sure, but I wanted to point all that out. Not
All
that I
the
was doing it under,
nuances for Zoom
yeah,
prov,
not that I
they
was,
say.
yeah, and this stuff is free. Everybody has a phone right now that has more technology and has a better camera than anything I used my freshman year in film school. And again,
Mm.
I went to one of the best film schools in the world. If you have a roommate, you have 2 phones and 2 laptops. That's a 4 camera shoot. That is what every local TV station is working with right now.
Hmm.
That's what Geek and Sundry, all the Twitch streams you watch of D&D shows, which are also improvised shows, by the way. So don't tell me that improv can't be successful or popular or make people money. Otherwise, there wouldn't be 10 billion of them with famous
Hmm.
people like Deborah Ann Wall doing them. Thank you. Right? You have to, like, that's no different. They're shooting those things with iPads and
Hmm.
a switcher like that I learned on in my high school senior AV class. We can
Hmm.
make really good improvised shows on Zoom. We just have to remember that it's television and not theater, because that's what a lot of people are doing. Like, I'm doing this, and oh hey Mark, thanks for meeting me in the park. Like that shit, I can't. It drives me nuts. It drives
Hmm.
me nuts.
Makes sense.
Rant over.
All right.
Let's
Well,
improvise.
so there's this suggestion. There's a lot of like improv suggestion generators online. I found one that I enjoy.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
so it has a location, a relationship, or a word. So I'm gonna let you pick which category you want to get a suggestion from.
I'm also now I gotta practice what I preach. I also like to stand up instead of just sitting down, because you move around a little
Yeah,
bit, right?
I get a little spatially challenged because I don't have really anywhere to go. But
Yeah. It also helps that I've taught on Zoom, and using the whole image when you're teaching and be like, all right, you guys got 5, go, right? Like
Mhm.
using the frame, all that
But I've
is
learned,
good practice.
even if you're sitting, you can
Mhm.
leave frame or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
You can get
So
close, you
what
can
were the
get away.
options again?
Location, relationship, or word.
Oh, let's get a location.
Location.
Mhm. You
Location.
want to plug the improv? You want to plug the improv generator you're using? Give them a little
Oh
pub.
yeah,
Give them a
it's
little.
canigeta.com. I do it in every one, so I usually remember.
Nice.
But yeah, um, yeah. All right. Wine cellar is the suggestion.
Oh, excellent.
Wine cellar.
Mm.
Hey Deborah,
Yes.
I I'm sorry that this night didn't go the way I planned. I was hoping our anniversary would be not us stuck in a wine cellar, but um,
It's fine. It's fine. I've made my peace with it. I've made my peace with it.
I I just feel
It'll make for a fun story. Max, it will make for a fun story.
I just feel like you're ignoring me and just kind of browsing the wine. I feel like
No, no, I'm browsing the wine, but I'm trying to find a nice one. This was an 88. I thought that's a little too fancy. This is our 7th anniversary. It's not our 20th. 88 is it's a litlittle pricey. Because anything we open, we have to pay for, right? That's the deal. Is that what he said?
yeah. Hmm.
Okay. I didn't mean to be ignoring you. I'm sorry. I don't want to ignore you. I'm here. I'm present now. I'm present. What do you need? What do you need from me?
I just figured, if we're gonna be stuck here, we should at least, make it work. Find a way to enjoy our anniversary, even if we are
That's
stuck
that's what I was trying. I was trying to find a nice bottle of wine for us to celebrate our 7th anniversary. Am I not being present enough? I'm sorry if I'm not being present.
I mean, yeah, I mean, a little conversation would be nice, but I understand. Like,
Okay.
why don't you just
Okay.
go ahead? No, no, go ahead and pick out the wine, and
No,
then
let's
let's.
talk. Let's talk. The wine is not going anywhere. We're in a wine cellar. What do you want to talk about? Let's talk. Let's talk. We shall talk. I am prepared for talking. Let's talk.
Okay, well,
You want me to go first? I can come up with a subject matter.
sure. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, God. I feel like that old Mike Myers sketch of like, discuss amongst yourselves, right? The Industrial Revolution, that old joke. Yeah. Um, okay. This is this is a little mean, but you asked for it. It's our 7th anniversary. I want you to tell me 7 things you first noticed when you met me.
Oh, here, put me on the spot, Deborah.
I did. I know. I said it was mean. I said it was mean, but you asked for it. You wanted to talk, and then we're talking. This is how I like to talk.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll start with the obvious personality, of course. That
Well,
right away.
thank
I mean,
you.
you had to speak
And
first, but I mean,
of course, but you notice an aura around me, an aura around me.
yes.
Like some people call that charisma. I walked into the room and you said that girl has personality, and I take that. Take that as a compliment.
I love your right eye and your left eye. So I guess that's two. I guess that's two more. So that's
Oh,
three.
1, 2, and 3. Okay, yeah, okay. You just say eyes, but yeah, it's 3. You're not padding the stats, right? You still got 4 more.
I know. I was gonna say, four of your fingers on your right hand, but I guess I'll switch it a little bit.
Okay,
I
I
love
don't think, yes, I wouldn't.
I just love everything about you. I can't really just pick seven things.
I didn't say you had to pick only 7 things. You can go over. If you want extra credit, you can get extra credit. I won't. You won't be bugging me.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll just say all 10 of your fingers. That's
You know,
13 items. Um,
hey, that is 13 of. You know what I liked about you?
what?
Yes, I noticed it the very first moment.
What is it?
Your massive, massive dick. And edit.
Great. Great. That's a good
Yeah.
edit.
I don't normally go blue, but I'm just like as it's in the back of my mind as we're doing the scene. I'm going like, where's it? Like I was like, we need a button because I know you only want this to be a couple minutes. I was just like, yeah, just go for the dick joke.
Oh,
When
I
in
could have
doubt.
played with this. I could have played with this scene for a long
Yeah.
time. This was super fun.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I
Yeah.
also too like I think I also sort of revealed a little bit of like I got this from Eric Honeycutt. If anyone can study with Eric Honeycutt, I highly recommend it. I think he's one of the best that we've got as far as improv teachers, but also as directors. Just he teaches viewpoints for Steppenwolf. He's one of the few people in the world that's allowed to teach that. And his thing, I got a lot from him. Is like he it is impossible, when we talk about people find themselves into argument scenes, it is impossible to have an argument scene with with Honeycutt. And I also don't like argument because it's inefficient. I love efficiency in my comedy, and arguments are inefficient. And here's like I found myself halfway through going like I'm just doing Eric Honeycutt right now. Because here's how every Eric Honeycutt sketch starts, or every improv scene starts. He'll check on something. He'll do some sort of physical piece of business. He'll check in with you. You got something? You don't have something? Okay, I'll reset. I don't know. I respectfully disagree. I think you'd look great in red. Impossible to have a bad scene with that guy.
Mm.
I don't know. Non-committal. I respectfully disagree. We've been having a conversation up to this point, but it's not an argument. I think you look great in red. Compliment. The man is a wizard. It's
A
impossible
genius.
to have. Yeah. If Honeycutt initiates the scene, he'll just rock you like a baby. You're all good.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we'll do an
Yeah.
intro real
And
quick.
then dick joke. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, of course. That's how you have to end it. With you just gotta
Mhm.
have a nice little scene and then just find a way to get it out.
Mhm. Nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone so much for coming. This is the Improv Summit. That's Brian. I'm Spencer. Take care. See you next time. Bye.